He's a former FDA commissioner and a CNBC contributor. He serves on the boards of Illumina and Pfizer. He writes in his newest op-ed for the Wall Street Journal about the Trump coronavirus spread, writing it might have been avoided and that Mr. Trump and his team aren't passive victims of bad luck and an aggressive virus. We'll get to that in a second. But what do you know just about the current state of President Trump in your view, because we've seen so many anecdotal stories about people that said, wow, I feel great. And then only to find out that the second week is when some of the really serious symptoms rise. Is it possible that that's what we're seeing in terms of the president? We've heard, you know, he says, I feel like I could walk out of here. There's speculation that he might even go back to the White House today. But knowing what we know, Scott, does that make sense? Did he get early enough intervention with some of that stuff, remdesivir and the Regeneron, to where he may not experience that what's not a favorable outcome that we've seen?
Well, look, we hope so, and it's possible. We don't have a lot of information. He does seem to be what we would call a moderate patient. He has some oxygen requirements. There's a suggestion that he has pneumonia or infiltrates, some kind of inflammatory change on his CT scan, his chest CT. They wouldn't put out the details, but they said it's consistent with what you would expect in this circumstance, which seemed to suggest that there's some infiltrates on that scan. Again, they wouldn't tell us exactly what. So he probably would be in the moderate category right now, given his age and those findings. Now, he did get a lot of advanced treatment. I think that the Regeneron product is going to end up being a good product, and hopefully will have made a difference in this case. Remdesivir, introduced early, should be more impactful. It is the case, to your initial question, that patients who do well this first week tend not to have that sort of second week, that inflammatory reaction. But there are exceptions. There are patients who don't have a very serious course of the infection in that first viral response phase, that first week of the illness, and then they'll go on to have that post-viral inflammatory phase that we worry about. But, you know, the fact that he does look like he's improving this week and he hasn't had very severe illness this week does suggest that his odds of having a bad second week is lower.
Scott, I think, you know, we heard about Friday and supplemental oxygen. I've read in different places that maybe there was a drop in oxygen levels on Saturday as well, which is closer. Also, as you said, they didn't say that the lung reading was normal. So that they said it was what you might expect, but they didn't say normal, which means maybe it could be some pneumonia. What about the dexamethasone? I thought that's not usually used as a prophylactic, as something in advance of things happening, is it? Or what does that indicate about whether there's some type of the more serious conditions that we've seen when steroids are called for?
Yeah, so it's consistent with that he's sort of in that moderate category. He's desaturating, he has low O2 sat, he does have some inflammatory changes on his lungs. The dexamethasone would be indicated in that setting. So dexamethasone is indicated for hospitalized patients who are requiring oxygen. So he might meet criteria just based on that alone. And their threshold for using it might be a little bit lower, because the reason you don't use it typically is you want to give it to patients when they're having that inflammatory response, but you don't want to give it to them when they're still fighting the virus, when they're in that direct viral fighting phase of their response, because the steroids themselves could perhaps diminish the body's ability to react to the virus, to actually fight off the viral particles. So you want to wait until you've mounted a fight against the virus, and now you're having those post-viral inflammatory changes. But given the fact they introduced remdesivir early, which is going to have direct activity on the virus, and given the fact that they introduced the antibody early, which again will also have direct activity on the virus, they might have been a little bit more confident at pushing the steroids a little bit earlier, because they said to themselves, you know, they don't need his immune system to do all the work fighting the virus, because they've given him a lot of medicines that are going to do some of that work for them.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.